Hello and welcome to my podcast and videos. Really appreciate you watching. Today we're going to talk about why the members of the National Guard in any state, um, but specifically here in California, why they are your true heroes and why they are important based on the work they do and how the organization runs and all that stuff. I'll be giving you some details, but um, I want to make sure I go over some important things to help protect the National Guard members from basically losing their jobs and all the negative things that happen to them. So basically, the United States has a completely voluntary military force. So we don't have a draft, right? And the reason we don't have a draft because enough qualified people every year join the services, whether it's the Marines, the Army, the Coast Guard, the Navy, the Air Force, you name it. Enough people join them, volunteer to, qualified people volunteer to join them that there is no need for the draft. And that really takes the burden away from the rest of the American citizens who don't want to serve in the military. It takes that burden away from them so they don't have to do it. And I mentioned before what service members usually go through when they deploy, how their life, is put on pause until they return and struggle to integrate. Well, the situation with the National Guard is even worse because the National Guard, um, people volunteer to join it. It's part of the reserve component, right? So they only do, generally 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year, unless there is a disaster or a war, or then they get deployed. But in that event, when they go deploy, basically, then they have to leave their jobs. And their jobs, by law, are technically um, reserved. Basically, those spots are reserved, and the employers are supposed to hire them back upon return. But unfortunately, the law, the way it's made, it's really weak and it doesn't really protect anybody from discrimination or termination. And that is the fault of Congress, of course, for making a weak law like that that is hard to enforce in the courts. As far as I'm concerned, any member of the National Guard that applies for a job needs to be prioritized over anyone else. And the job needs to be protected, period. I mean, in a state like California, where they have stringent laws, labor laws, to protect employees, but they fail to protect their own members of the National Guard, is really sad that the laws are too weak to protect the people when they return back to their jobs. Now, there are some employers that are good and they actually honor that, but a lot of employers don't. A lot of employers don't even hire when they see on your resume that you're in the National Guard because they don't want to hire you because they know at some point you might be gone for, an extended period. If there's an earthquake, fires, a war, that you you might deploy, you might have to be gone for an extended period. And after 9/11, if you recall, the Army specifically was doing a 1 year deployment rotation amongst its different groups, the National Guard, the reserves, and the active duty. So when a National Guard member basically ends up deploying in the event of a war or even an exercise or a mission to go to some foreign country for over a year, well, when they come back, the chances are their job is gone is pretty high. And even if they hire you, like in my case, if they rehire you or bring you back, after I came back in 2004 from Operation Iraqi Freedom, I was only at work for 1 week before I was laid off. And they laid me off along with the minimum number they need to lay off without suffering any repercussions. They laid off 120 people with me, basically. So they have these loopholes and these ways to get around the law, basically. And at the end of the day, I was jobless. And that is the case for a lot of the National Guard members. They struggle to get a job, and when they get a job, they struggle to hold on to that job. So, what we as a country, represented by the legislators, both on the state level and the federal level, what we're telling people is if you join the military and you sacrifice and you serve, well, you don't deserve good pay, you don't deserve any benefits, and honestly, we're not going to protect you when you come back and make sure that you get your job back and that you go back to your life, and we help you reset everything to the way almost it was or even better. So why would people join the National Guard or even the military at this point? It makes it harder on them to make that decision. And if people don't volunteer, like I said, then we will have a draft, and that draft will impact all Americans 18 and over. So if you don't want the draft, then vote for the right people that have good agendas that will actually serve you as a citizen and your fellow citizens. Uh, Vote for people that actually care, that give a damn about this country, not about the money and getting rich and special interest and foreign lobbyists and all these things that the legislators, they're like cattle. If you go to buy, I don't know if anybody saw videos when they buy cattle or horses, they parade them in front of buyers with numbers on them. And unfortunately, our Congress and state legislator is basically, they're nothing but a bunch of cattle, walking around with numbers, and people donate to them. They give them money just so they can basically own them. That's what happens at the end. When you're at the cattle um, market, you bid on a bull, you buy it, it's yours. You bid on a cow, you buy it, it's yours. The same with horses. And unfortunately, that's who represents us in Washington, D.C. That's who represents us here in California and Sacramento as far as the California legislative body. So pay attention. Do you want to vote for a horse, for a cow, or do you want to vote for a person that basically has a good agenda that serves you? At the end of the day, it's up to you. I'm only giving you examples of the hypocrisy that we live in, specifically in a state like California that has these supposedly tough laws, to protect employees, but they don't want to protect military service members from discrimination. Why would anyone hire a National Guard representative, member, knowing that they might deploy, they might lose them for, from 2 weeks to, 3 months to a year, and who knows? So what incentive do they have? And what repercussions would they suffer if they deny a National Guard member employment? And then if they actually employ them, what protects a National Guard member from when they return, that their job is in place and waiting for them, and that they don't suffer basically um, lack of promotions and advancement at work because now they're in the National Guard? It's like a stain. It's like a stain on the person rather than a badge of honor. It's a stain on the person. That's how members of the National Guard feel for the most part. So I'm asking you again to be careful who you vote for, and vote for a person that's going to represent us and work for us, not a cow or a horse. Okay? Thank you for joining me. Have a good day.